I'm back. What's up, y'all? I just wanted to say thank you so much for listening to the podcast. And now that we're back, I have a couple of things and announcements that I want to make. So, the first thing is, I feel so weird because this episode, there's like a little bit of a delay in like the audio and video, and it feels really weird. And I can't explain it, but you might notice it a tiny bit. And it's very annoying, and I was with this like streaming company and I did the podcast on video and it was supposed to be perfect, but it wasn't. I'm not with that company anymore. I'm very upset, but it's okay. Future episodes will definitely be better. New episodes will be out every Sunday now that I'm back. If you can, please share this podcast with others. I want to start releasing some exclusives. So I actually have like an exclusive section of this podcast that will be released later. The only way for me to release it on like the little Anchor, Spotify for podcasts, this thing is apparently I have to have 100 listeners within this like time frame of like a month or something. So share this with everybody you know. I really want people to hear this episode and the episodes that I release in the future. Episodes will be out every month now. I'm just like really trying to go in on this and do this to a full-time capacity. So I want to just make more episodes and enjoy what I'm doing. And I'm at this point where I'm just trying to figure out like kind of how I want my life to go in the grand scheme of things. So knowing that like I really want to go much harder into content creation for speech and debate, all of the ideas that I have, it's crazy how many ideas I have all the time. And I'm ready to start making these things. I just need your support. So I hope that you do support me and all of the endeavors that I'm trying to make. And I hope you're there for me. I'm super excited. Please enjoy this episode with Jeremy Tardy. Who's a like famous actor, amazing person doing speech and debate. So you're gonna love it. I'm so excited. Okay, anyway, that's all I gotta say. Enjoy the episode, and I'll talk to y'all later. Peace out. What's up, everybody? It's Dante, aka the Forensics Guy, and you are listening to the Forensics Experience, the podcast where we discuss topics in the speech and debate community with the world's most influential coaches, students, and alumni in the activity. And today, I am super excited. I'm super excited for this one because there's a whole long story that we'll probably get into, but I'm excited. I'm excited to introduce you to Jeremy Tardy, one of the greats, a speech and debate person that you have no idea about yet, but you will, and I'm super excited to be able to introduce you. But you already know how I do. I don't like to introduce people because I think they have so much better to say when they say it in their own words. So I'm going to give Jeremy the opportunity to introduce himself. So Jeremy, can you please let us know who you are and what do you do in the speech and debate community?
Okay, well, hello to you and your guests. My name is Jeremy Tardy, as you just said. I am an actor primarily, also a producer and director. Started very young in the arts and got involved into speech and debate around the age of, I want to say, 13, somewhere around there. I went to middle school at Roosevelt Middle School and got involved on the forensics team, in which I had the category of demonstration. And so that allowed me and a good friend of mine the opportunity to um, be involved in forensics, where we would begin competing. And we actually, as I think about it, we were pretty good. We did a whole demonstration presentation on magic tricks, actually. And so we would do like card tricks or different other different other types of magic tricks that would actually be pretty funny and interesting. And so we did that for about a year. Won like I think we won like first place in the city of Milwaukee competition and went all the way up to state. I think we were like second or third place in state. And that was one of the first times that I ever competed in anything using my abilities as an actor. And so that really provided for me the groundwork upon which I built, the rest of my work as an artist. So in terms of speech and debate, I don't do too much debate except perhaps with my wife. But other than that, the forensics experience was a very unique and a useful one for me in my formative years. Now I'm an actor, full time for the most part, doing film and TV. I come from the theater. I'm currently at Northwestern in the studio here, teaching an acting on camera class out here for the summer. So I'll be in Evanston for the next few weeks. But yeah, professionally an actor, lots of TV, film, different shows that I've done.
I love that. That's absolutely amazing. I think you're doing obviously great things because being able to find you. Well, for those who are listening, it was a really great story. Kind of finding them. Both of our moms like or know each other, and they were like really good friends in the past. And I think we even hung out before, but neither of us remember it, so we were probably like little babies. But it's super cool to be able to connect with you again and yeah, just talk to you about forensics and everything. So I want to just kind of talk a little bit first about demonstration for a lot of people who don't know, who are like not in the state of Wisconsin. They aren't lucky enough to have that privilege. Demonstration is basically I've always looked at it as informative for like the NSDA events. That's probably the closest you'll get to that. And for those who have informative, as you know, you have like your visual aid and stuff like that. But demonstration is meant to be a little bit more like, all right, how to do something and like really showing that. And you can use visual aids in demonstration. You can also do other things like have like your own, maybe like act something out or show something out. I remember a really good demonstration I watched some years ago where this student talked about like how to DJ and had like the entire like DJ thing with them and was like literally doing this like live. And I think that that's so cool. And first of all, that's why I think that event is so cool is because you can showcase those things in front of people and do live things. I've seen people do dance things, like they'll show like how to do certain dances and everything. I've seen ones that are like even more basic, but still like I like the demonstration offers that element of like the how to. Like I've seen someone literally do something as basic as like how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, which is really crazy because you just bring the peanut butter and jelly with you to a tournament, and I don't know how much bread and jelly you're wasting in every round, but I think that's awesome that people are willing to do that. So I have a couple of questions that I have here that I just want to ask you as we move forward. So when it comes to the career that you're doing now as acting, I'm interested like in learning more about how do you think, if any, speech and debate was able to help you get to the place that you're at now? What were those things that you learned from your coach? Those things that you had and while you were doing demonstration that might have helped get you to the point that you are at today?
Well, speech is certainly a fundamental part of what I do. I mean, it's the primary way in which we as human beings communicate is through speech, and certainly on stage, on screen, speech is very important. It's important not just to be heard, but to be understood, right? So there are many different techniques that you train in order to be articulate, in order to enunciate, in order to be able to project your voice to be heard. Um, Most of my work, if really all of my work on screen, there's going to be a mic, hidden somewhere under my shirt or a boom hanging up here. So it doesn't require much in terms of projecting your voice, but even from being quiet or speaking softer, you still have to speak clearly.
Oh, there.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now, yes, I
Okay.
can.
Yeah. So being able to speak clearly, right, and to be understood. And
Yeah.
so at that time, I never really took any debate type training or courses, but the rhetorical techniques that we learn during the process of forensics and demonstration and, you know, being able to present something that was not only interesting, magic tricks was our choice, but being able to present it in such a way that people would be able to absorb the information and retain that information and also, throughout
Yeah.
the course of it, that it might be entertaining and somewhat funny and informative at the same time. And so that is really, really fundamental in my work as an artist, because speech is the first thing, I suppose. And so it's always been really important to be able to be a clear speaker. I teach acting, as I mentioned earlier, and we drill that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. We drill speech technical, exercises to make sure that these kids or young performers understand the importance of speech in our work.
So true. I think I love that you even mentioned that about like that drilling stuff, and I just want to say for any like newer coaches that are listening, I think that that's one thing that any of us like veteran coaches like forget a lot of the time is to use some of those drills. And I know every time you probably go to a forensics tournament, you might see some of those students who are like in a big group from some team and they're doing all their like vocal warm ups and stuff. I feel like, as far as I'm concerned, based on talking to other coaches and stuff, that they don't do that as often, and that's something that they should be doing. So hopefully, everybody who's listening, like, make sure you get your team to do a lot more of those exercises, because while speaking clearly and confidently is important, we want to also make sure we can dive into those little nuances that hopefully will make them better too. Um, my next question is for what what do you miss from competing in forensics? Based on my experience of like talking to you, it seems like you probably only got like a year or two in the game, so of being able to compete at all. So, what's something that you missed from that time period?
Well, we talking, more than 15 years, so I can't say I miss a lot, but what I really gained from that experience is, number one, appreciation for a whole community that I didn't know existed, right? So there's that,
Yeah,
going to those meets and going to the competitions and what you call them, finals and the different rounds. I really, because I wasn't involved in sports as I should also mention
yeah,
that as a youth, I played sports kind of with my brothers at home and things like that, but I was never involved in any organized sport through school or any organization. And so I had never had that experience of really competing. And this being my first intro into the world of competition among other, young people, it really opened my eyes up to, number one, that community of individuals that were involved in forensics. But what I really appreciated from that time period was the ability to do what I love to do, which is to speak and perform in front of other people and get positive affirmation from that. And so at
yeah.
that time, I knew I wanted to be an actor at that point, but there was no path ahead of me as to how to be successful as an actor. And at this time, we're talking about the late 90s, early 2000s, there weren't that many black men and women in the industry at the level at which, I want to be working at it and am working at. And so there wasn't a
Yeah.
beaten path for me to follow, so to speak. And being able to have that experience, I was able to get confidence. I was able to, at a time where it was really important for me as a young performer, young artist, to be able to compete among a lot of other
Yeah.
talented people and to rise among them in the ranks. So I do remember that vividly. I know my mom still has some of those trophies and ribbons somewhere, and boxed up in the garage or basement somewhere. But that was a really important, informative time, in my youth as a young performer.
Definite. That's awesome. I think the one thing that really struck with me that I thought was just great that you said was like, I like, well, okay, so I feel like we always like would joke about like how like validation kind of affected us in terms of as students in like speech and debate and forensics, and I think that that's so important because I feel that a lot of students sometimes don't get that type of validation, and those things are super important for like what they want to be when they grow up and the careers that they want to aspire to, and like it's like we are in this position where we are competing on a weekly basis, sometimes in forensics, depending on how often you go to tournaments. But we're competing, we're getting these trophies every time. Hopefully, if we're doing really well, and it's a constant validation. It's a great ego boost, and it makes you feel good. Like you're having this opportunity to compete. I know that for myself, when I did forensics, it was the opportunity. I mean, I guess I still do forensics, but actually being a student and competing in it, it was great to have this opportunity where you got to take something that was artistic, something that you felt like you really liked to do, but also kind of receive like the accolades for it and make it competitive. I felt like I've always been a competitive person in some way, and it's just super fun to do that. I did sports and stuff, and middle school and high school and college and everything. But I also was, my degree is in theater, and I did all of those things too. So having that opportunity to take theater basically and make it competitive is just super fun. And in its essence, theater is competitive, regardless of its status with forensics, right? I remember there was a documentary about forensics actually, and the lady mentioned how art is always competitive. What I choose to buy, like I could buy this shirt made by a different creator than a different shirt or something of that nature, and one of the ways that looks really interesting to me and how those things can be competitive is like from media, like movies, TV shows, and stuff like that. And that leads me into wanting to talk a little bit about your overall career in acting so far. I haven't seen many of the things that you've done, but there's one specific thing that I've seen that I think is like one of my favorite things of all time. There's a movie slash TV show called Dear White People, and you had a role on that, and you did amazing. So did the rest of the cast, and it was just absolutely like fantastic. And I think that it was really cool because it felt so forensics oriented to me, because when I see shows like that are like very great, entertaining, and also have a powerful message in a way, it's a really great way to get other people connected and talking and everything. And I just want to like question, like, how did that show feel for you? Like being able to do that show and have that role on that show, and what other things do you feel like you learned from being able to take everything that you might have learned from forensics and actually put that into a real life thing here?
Well, working on that show, I got it by auditioning for the role. So, for those who haven't seen or aren't aware of the show, it's a Netflix series, Dear White People. I started working on that, I want to say 2016. So, I did the first three seasons. Now, I quit the show prior to the fourth season. Some behind the scenes stuff was going on, which I'm sure if anyone's interested, they could read about it. But in any case, working on it to begin, it was a very good experience, especially considering it's a almost entirely black cast and a black crew. And that was the first time I'd ever been on a set where I had seen so many black faces in front of and behind the camera. Again, I'd be hard pressed to say exactly what from my experience, almost 20 years ago, doing forensics has directly been applicable to my work as an actor. But I think it's all one, being a performer and standing in front of people and being able to communicate and having confidence and knowing how to project and knowing how to connect with the audience, whether that audience is right in front of you or whether that audience is on the other side of the camera. All of that stuff works and goes toward the ultimate performance, I suppose. And so, in all my work, I know that that experience that I've had since, professionally working since age 12 and being involved in theater prior to that, like age 5 or 6, all of that life experience of just being on stage, being in front of people. For anybody who wants to be a performer, be it a musician, a singer, any type of performer, dancer, actor, the more experience that you have performing in front of people and also making mistakes, perhaps failing, because that's such a really
Yeah.
important thing too. And I do remember, that to go back to that point about the competition. Hopefully, this will tie in a little bit to your question. To the point about the competition, is there are times where you don't win, right? There are times where you don't place. And so you have
Yes.
to not just evaluate what you did and what you could do better, but you have to look at and be observant to what the people who won or who did well have done and take some tips from or take some notes from what was successful for them, because to your earlier point, if you come in
Yeah.
to the forensics tournament and your demonstration is on PB&J, well, everybody knows how to do PB&J, and I've seen that guy that you saw doing it, or guy or gal,
Yeah.
and so there's a more. You also have more of an awareness because in our own silos, in our own respective laboratories, so to speak, where we're working out our craft and trying out things and developing our process, developing whatever that performance or that competitive act will be, isolated from, as you say, the competition or the marketplace. It's easy to think that what you're doing is good. And generally speaking, you may be working with people who are pretty supportive and don't want to hurt your feelings and want you to feel
Yeah.
safe and so on and so forth. But once you step out into the real world or step out into a competitive context, then you're faced with other people who may be more or less talented, who may be working more or less as hard as you, and so you're faced with that competition, and that also, for those of us who are motivated by it, will drive us to be better. And so I look at those artists in my
Yeah.
industry who I respect and whose work I admire, and let that inform me to either make me better or make me more competitive or try things I haven't done or work on producing this or so on and so forth. But generally speaking, having
Hmm.
competition is good. I mean, that's why we live in a
Yeah.
society where there is competition and there's a promotion for competition because it makes us all better. Well, that's the ideal of it anyway. It could make us all better.
True. Yeah. That is a really good point, and I think I feel like one of the big things from this that I've looked at is like the idea of like just subjectivity, and I think mentioning how competitive some of these things are. At the end of the day, for any students listening, any coaches listening, we always have to remember that at the end of the day, forensics is just subjective. Like there are somebody might think that this person is the best performance they've ever seen in the world, and then someone else is like, wow, that was just not good. It could use some work. And it just wasn't great. And I'm curious. I feel like the audience would love to know. In forensics, obviously that subjectivity is there, and when it comes to trying to be successful at this event, you want to try to. I feel like you want to have this. What I always teach is this objectivity in subjectivity. So, like, I feel like there's always objectivity and subjectivity from the perspective of as long as the most people agree. I feel like there's that objectivity still, even
Hmm.
within that subjectivity. If 70% of the world thought Beyonce was beautiful, like the 30% of the world who might not think that are wrong, in my opinion. That's the way I kind of look at it. So I guess I'm really curious to figure out. I feel for students, we're always trying to change things up, appeal to different judges, and make sure we are doing these things right when competing in forensics. So I want to know, from in the real world, in the career aspect, have you found yourself, and when, if you have, like, when do you use that adherence and adaptability and subjectivity? Are you going ever in front of a different director and like doing an audition and you realize like, oh, I've looked up this director and they like this specific thing? Do you change any of your acting when maybe doing an audition for that? Or how do you tend to adapt to the way you feel like other people might feel in
That's a
terms of
good
watching
question.
craft?
Well, number one, I think as an artist, you have to adapt. If you don't adapt, you die as an artist. And there are many examples of that
Hmm.
in the world of theater. There are a lot of theaters that are closing or shutting down because they haven't been able to adapt to the times and haven't been able to
Yeah.
survive as a result of that. But to speak where directors or producers are concerned, subjectivity, I think there's a huge amount of that, particularly in film and in television. There are, though, really important objective standards, and that's the important thing to remember that there are technical things, from an objective standpoint. If you're doing an audition, it's important to know how to slate. It's important to know the lines, right? You can be the
Yeah.
most beautiful person in the world, but if you don't come in actually knowing the material, that's an objective thing that, if you can't do it, you can't do it, right? And so,
Yeah.
there's a certain standard for which you got to be able to at least meet. And after that, yes, it becomes subjective because to your point, it might be as simple as or as arbitrary as they need somebody that's 6 feet tall, right? Or maybe they already have a dark
Yeah.
skinned African American guy with a beard, so they're looking for a lighter skinned guy who don't have a beard. There's all types of things. And so on some level, you have to accept that
Yeah.
there's just a lot that is not in your control. So then what is in your control? What is in your control? Well, your
Yeah.
vessel is in your control. Your work and your performance is in your control. And also the time that you take. When I was a younger performer, and I tell this to a lot of the younger performers that I work with, because I remember always, for some reason, feeling the need to move through material as if I didn't want to take up too much of their time or space. And there's a freedom that
Yeah.
I found in taking your time. That doesn't mean go slower or to go slowly, but to take your time. That's something you can control. And the things that are within our control, that's where the focus should be. And if we're focusing on those things which are subjective, the taste of the judge or producer or director, their preferences or inclinations, that's something that if you're trying to change or assimilate to, unless you're in a conversation where perhaps they say, maybe try this, which is going to be a note that they might give you, then you can adjust. But if you're just trying to mind read and try to do what
Yeah.
somebody else might want to make someone else happy or pleased with your work, again, that's not something you can control, right? So what you can control is this is me.
True.
I'm going to, in the context of a performance, be as truthful, as authentic, and as professional as I can possibly be. And in that, if you like it, wonderful. If you love it, wonderful. If you don't like it, hey, that's just the breaks. But at least I know that when I walk away from
Yeah.
that performance, audition, or what have you, that I have done my best. And I also feel comfortable knowing that I didn't compromise myself to try to do what I think someone might like. A lot of people would ask me. I went to Juilliard, so I got my undergrad degree, Bachelor of Fine Arts, over there, studying drama. And
Wow.
quite often, people will reach out to me, and in conversation, will ask, what do I need to do to get in? Um, and I had the benefit at that time of not really being aware of the school or its reputation. I was pretty ignorant to all of that. I was just like, hey, I don't have to study math or science. I'm down. I'll go there. So, I was just myself and I performed and did the material. And by the grace of God, I was admitted into the school. And I often will tell people, you have to be you. You have to proceed with your own truth and giving the performance that you work on, that you're happy with. If you're trying to craft and make yourself
Yeah.
a product for someone else's desire, um, it's hard to please people if you do that. But if you walk to the beat of
True.
your own drum
Yeah.
and you find your own truth, generally speaking, there will be other people who will be able to appreciate that. I hope that answers your question.
Definite. Yeah, no, that was an amazing answer. I thought that was so great. I love that, and I think that there's a lot that the students specifically really can learn from this, and I think that I feel like students are going to get so wrapped up sometimes, especially like in new rounds that they're competing in, that they're trying to like it's very common, I would say, for students to like look at a judge and see them as a certain way, and then they try to adapt on the spot to them without knowing anything. Like I think they should just perform the way that they always have performed and not worry about it, because it's very easy to see. You see somebody, you're like, oh, that's just a probably parent judge, maybe a middle-aged mom or dad, and I should switch it up this way. And it's like, no, just do it the way you've done it. You don't know the inside mind of this person. Just do it your absolute best, and I think whatever rewards you'll reap will come
Yeah.
if you do your absolute best. And
And
that's all.
hopefully
That's
in
all that I
that
can really
same
say from that.
vein, hopefully in that same
Uh,
vein, to
Go
add to
ahead.
what you're saying, they could enjoy it. You know, at that time period, I know the stakes seem so high.
Yes.
Oh, it's a competition. I really want to win. And then there's the stress and anxiety that comes with that. But then there's also the flip side of it of just enjoy it, have fun. This isn't life or death. This
Yeah.
isn't make it or break it. Enjoy it and have fun. And there's usually those from my memory. It's usually those um, things that you might see, whether it's demonstration or whatever other category, where the performer or the artist or student is actually enjoying themselves and having fun. Usually that allows us as the audience to have fun. If you're seeing somebody who's, uptight and
True.
wound up and anxious, that makes us anxious sitting through it. So breathe
Yeah.
and enjoy the process. And in doing
Yeah.
so, that will help us along. And don't worry about the awards and placing. As long as you're having fun and you're learning and you're growing, that's what matters at that age.
That's so true. I feel like I'm probably gonna say this on every single episode, but I always say at the end of the day, those gold plated trophies that you got back in the day will not matter as much as the fun and the experience that you had doing the activity. I know your trophies are at your mom's house probably still, but like I
Right,
mean you haven't
right,
seen them probably in a
right.
decade. You haven't like really touched them or looked at them most likely. So but you still have the memories of like the fun and the activity, and I think that really matters. It's there's so many things I want to talk to you about, because like you went to the school that I really wanted to go to, Roosevelt, which I thought was just a super good school. At least back when I was like looking at schools, I ended up
Okay.
going to Milwaukee School of Languages, but Roosevelt was like the school that I was like, oh man, I was like, this seems like a great school. It really did. But I guess if you want to talk a little bit about that experience, you can with with how your experience was at Roosevelt, because I think like Roosevelt was meant to be like an art school, so I'm interested in hearing about that. But even more so, I know we both also went to First Stage Theater Academy, and I would love to like kind of know your experience about first, how you felt at First Stage, and just like I know in the past I think you've went back as well, and done maybe like some talks and like doing other work there. I used to work there too, so it's a really great place. But yeah, I want to just kind of hear like how did first how did First
Okay.
Stage make you feel, basically?
Well,
So yeah, like
to your
what was
first
that
question,
experience like for you?
Roosevelt, I only went for sixth grade. We moved to Franklin, I think the
Okay.
end of the year or something. So I ended up going to school for the rest of middle school out in Franklin. But I enjoyed it. I went to Elm Creative Arts, which was right next to it.
Okay.
So everybody that kind of went to Elm just went to Roosevelt, it was right next door. And so, yeah, it was fun. I was in
Okay.
band and did forensics. I was pretty involved over there. So it was overall, I remember it being a very pleasant experience. At first
Yeah.
stage, for me, that was one of the most important things in my development as a young actor, because as a student at first stage, or excuse me, at Elm Creative Arts School, we would take field trips to see plays at first stage. And I didn't know that that was a thing that people could
Nice.
do, is, be on stage in front of all these students in the real world. And so I consider that my first professional acting experience, which it was, which I started doing plays with them at age
Yeah.
12. And to me, that was
Wow.
invaluable because you got to work with working adult actors, and to be on stage and share the stage with adult actors as a young adult really gave me invaluable experience, because I would watch them, I would watch how they rehearsed, I would watch their process, and of course, in performing and working with them, they gave me a lot of confidence, right? As a young child on stage with a grown adult,
Yeah.
you're both on the same playing field in a way. And so over the years, I've done many
Yeah.
performances with them. I've gone back and taught there, but I got a lot of training from them. They were so gracious to give me some scholarships to study, and I took every class I could take there, from fencing to speech to
Yeah.
Shakespeare to script analysis, whatever I could take, I took. And I'm currently now on the board of directors for First Stage, which I am privileged and proud to be on. Great
Oh wow.
organization for those who may be in the Milwaukee area. They do programming that's mostly theater for young audiences, and family, type of production stuff for the whole family to come and see. And generally speaking, the kids love those productions. So that was a really important part of my development as an actor, as I said. And without that theater being there, I don't
Yeah.
know how I would have found my way as an actor. I got most of my training before I went to Juilliard. I got it through First Stage.
I love that so much, and I think it's so great that I feel like that's definitely a thing that we have in common. I Every time I get the chance to, I talk about First Stage and I talk it up, and I'm just like, it's one of the, like, whenever someone, like, I mention it, I'm like, oh, you don't know about First Stage? I was like, it's one of the best children theater places in the nation. Like, are you serious? Like, it's just it really captured my love like immediately when I first had the opportunity to do it. I did the same thing. I did a tour at First Stage like when I was in middle school, and then I was like, wow, this is such a cool place. I would love to go here. And like I think they must have had a sign up for something, because eventually I got a thing in the mail, and then it was like, hey, come take this class. And I remember, even though First Stage does an amazing job at, being able to like subsidize prices and making things even more affordable, at that moment it wasn't something that, my mom was able to afford for me. But I was lucky enough to have, like my mom had a friend who like paid for the classes that I took, and that really changed my life. I think I did like some comedy classes and other like scene study classes and stuff, and it really boosted the route that I wanted to go down. And I feel like I always tell people, like, I think around like eighth or ninth grade, maybe ish, is when I really knew that I wanted my work to be directly involved in forensics, and just, do everything I can within this activity and give it all the love that is given back to me. And I feel that, First Stage was a big part of that. And I'm super, super glad to be able to have that opportunity to go to First Stage and to share that with you, and know that, it's not just me that First Stage was able to change. It was also, other students who had that opportunity back when they were young as well. Um, okay, so I wanna There's some other questions that I have. We're gonna save that because that's going to be a part of our exclusive. So as most people will know now, and I probably have mentioned this on Instagram and stuff, we're gonna have some more exclusive sections of the show now. So for those who are willing to support and have supported, we'll be able to have that access to some of these like just kind of more fun, random questions that we'll have when we are doing the podcast. So for those who are listening right now, this is the end of the show. I want to thank you all for listening, and I am so glad that you had the opportunity to meet and to learn more from Jeremy. So for those who are listening and they're like, oh my gosh, Jeremy is amazing, one of the greatest people in the world, I need to know more about him. How do they find you? What where
Are you
you
on my address?
not like actually located, but
I know what you mean.
but
Sure.
how can they get in touch with you?
That's where I'm primarily active, although I'm not that active on social media. But I'm on Instagram at Jeremy Tardy, my whole name, as well as on Facebook and Twitter. Not yet on TikTok, Lord have mercy. TikTok. That's my age right there, God. Anyway, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, you can find me. You can check out some of my credits on IMDb. And yeah, so if you want to reach out, send a note through Instagram or Facebook. I'll be happy to get back to you whenever I can.
Awesome. And for those who already know me, you know how to do this. If you want to stay in the conversation, if you got more questions, anything, more things you want for the show, you can always reach out to me. I'm the forensics guy on every single thing, every single platform, even on MySpace. No, I don't have MySpace, but I will one day. All right. So I want to thank y'all for listening to the show and giving us your attention for this past like half hour. And yeah, more episodes to come out soon. As you know, I never know a great way to end this episode, so I'm just gonna say peace out.